evening. This is Thursday, December 4th, 47 days until the inauguration of President-elect Barack Obama. In the jargon of our time, the phrases car salesman, and especially used car salesman, are not exactly compliments nor assurances. So in our fifth story on the countdown tonight, what would you call three men who went back to Capitol Hill for the second time in a month trying to again sell America on saving their industry at a huge public cost? Used car bailout salesman? We made mistakes, said one CEO. One of them, apparently, basic math. What started out as a $25 billion request last month, today up to $34 billion. One economist telling Congress the auto industry might actually need $90 billion more after that. The executives, as we mentioned, admitting mistakes, not exactly the same as admitting responsibility.
We're here today because we made mistakes, which we're learning from, because some forces beyond our control have pushed us to the brink.
I want you to know I heard your message loud and clear.
We take this very seriously. We understand our fiduciary responsibility. I can tell you I understand the weight of this meeting and tomorrow.
2 weeks ago, the CEOs chastised for taking private jets to Washington in order to beg for the big bucks. This time they were driven in hybrids. Not enough to stop the jokes about how they might then get home.
At least three of our witnesses, maybe more, have driven a long way to be here. We thank you for that. Along the way.
Chairman, I wonder if they're going to drive back.
I think that'll depend on what we do here in the next few days.
It has not gone unnoticed that no similar concerns about profligate spending had been asked of Wall Street CEOs when they arrived on Capitol Hill to receive their bailout, with comparatively few questions of any kind asked. Last night on this news hour, that disconnect raised by Michael Moore.
When the three automaker chiefs went to Washington, they were treated like errant school children and then sent back home to Detroit to write an essay on why we should get free cash. When the Wall Street bankers and thieves came down there back in October, it was just the opposite. Nobody asked them what they flew down on.
Banking Committee Chair Dodd saying today that, quote, there's no doubt that the auto companies have done far more than the financial companies to show that they're deserving of financial support. As for doing nothing, Mr. Dodd comparing that to a game of Russian roulette. The president of the Auto Workers Union telling him that a solution would have to come and come fast.
How near a term do you think bankruptcy is?
I do not believe at this point in time, on the data that I've seen, that General Motors will make it out of the end of the year.
So this month, you think they'd be bankrupt in the month of December?
Unless something changes dramatically, and I would hope that it does.
So your conclusion is by the end of this year, by the end of this month, we could lose General Motors as a corporation?
I believe that we could lose General Motors by the end of this month.
Time now to call upon our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
The phrase used by the General Motors CEO, Rick Wagoner, today, some forces beyond our control pushed us to the brink, something of the Bushian sense of things having merely happened on his watch. How much confidence did he and the other two CEOs convey today?
Well, they didn't instill any confidence in the senators they were speaking to, even the Democrats. In my own survey of Senate Democrats, I found very little support and a lot of disappointment once again, and a lot of skepticism about whether there would be any bailout bill, whatever threats of bankruptcy there are notwithstanding. As a matter of fact, after this meeting today, Keith, Senator Dodd and Senator Harry Reid, the Democratic leader, joined two House leaders in sending a letter to the auto companies basically saying, you know what, maybe you ought to go to the TARP, you know, the temporary asset relief program being run out of the Treasury. See if you can get some money from there, because we're really not sure, that was the implication, we're going to be able to get any for you here.
So do you have any numerical idea on that, or even where this divides politically? Because it seems like you have some liberals and some conservatives on each side.
Well, part of the problem is we're still dealing with the old Congress, the existing Congress, where the balance between Democrats and Republicans is very close. That makes it even harder for the auto companies. But even among Democrats, there's a lot of skepticism, Keith. Chris Dodd, the head of the Banking Committee, is going to soldier on. He's going to try to put together a bill that may be brought up next week. But it's not clear what's going to be in it, what dollar figures are going to be in it, or anything of the kind. And talking to one Senate leader tonight, I was struck by the almost air of throwing up the hands that they seem to be having there up on the Hill after today.
I thought Michael Moore made two good points last night. One was that contrast in reaction to Wall Street and to Detroit. The other is, if all the common stock of GM could be bought for less than $4 billion, why are we being asked to pay $34 billion for the whole industry? Or if you prefer this kind of math, it's about $5 for every man, woman, and child on Earth.
Well, the first point that Michael Moore made is a very good one, and he knows about the auto industry from the ground up, being from that part of the world. The auto industry is unlucky in the sense. Timing is everything in politics, Keith. And as one Senate Democrat told me tonight, you know, there's bailout fatigue up on the Hill. The bankers got there first. The big banks got there first. AIG got there first. They were too big to fail. The irony here is that some people are claiming that the auto industry isn't too big to fail. Well, if they'd got there first, it might have been the other way around. And as far as the total capitalization, the total market value of the auto companies, all three of them could be purchased. All of the stock could be purchased for a lot less than the $34 billion figure that was being floated around today.
So if this bailout happens under these terms, I mean, would there be conditions? Would we be saying to Detroit, okay, you can't make anything more environmentally troubling than a hybrid ever again?
Well, I don't think that's realistic, if it even comes to that, if there is a bailout, if there is a bill, because auto companies are going to need to make some money in the short run as well. In the short run means producing a lot of what they have. Don't forget that the GM leader, Wagner, today said, you know, they still want to produce 40 of the 48 models they were thinking of. That's not all hybrids. That's not all little cars. Not anything close to a smart car. That's a lot of big cars. And at a time when gasoline is now suddenly cheap again, there's all the more incentive for them to still want to produce and sell cars that are not all that fuel efficient. So if the Congress tries to impose too many restrictions, they'll end up killing the very industries they're trying to save. It's a terrible conundrum that the Congress faces, but I got to say the mood is still not favorable to the auto companies up on the Hill.
Yeah, it sounds like the tiger or the tiger. No lady involved in this option.
Exactly.
Howard Fineman of Newsweek, of course, of our own political staff. As always, sir, great thanks for your time.
Thank you, Keith.